I'm Pauline. 3 weeks ago, I stood in a private room at the most luxurious restaurant in town, surrounded by 53 relatives. My parents had thrown me what I thought was a birthday surprise, but instead, it turned into a public humiliation. As I looked around at the sea of faces, all dressed in their finest, I felt a sinking feeling in my stomach. There were no balloons, no streamers, no cake. Just a deafening silence and cold stares. My parents, sitting at the head of the table, wore expressions that sent shivers down my spine. My mother, with a smile that didn't reach her eyes, gestured for me to sit in the empty chair in the center of the U-shaped table. I sat down, my heart pounding in my chest. My father stood up, picked up a champagne glass and a silver spoon, and tapped it. The room fell silent. "Thank you all for coming tonight," he said, his voice booming like he was addressing a courtroom. "We've gathered here for a family matter, not to celebrate Pauline's birthday." My stomach turned to ice as he began to list all the so-called choices I had made that had concerned them. She abandoned her business education. She refused to join the family company. "She's lived a life that doesn't reflect our family's values," he said. Murmurs rippled through the room, and I heard someone whisper, "Always knew she was a rebel." "Therefore," my father continued, "as of tonight, Pauline is no longer a member of this family." The words hit me like a sledgehammer. Gasps filled the room, and I felt like I was suffocating. Then, my mother pulled out a folded piece of paper and placed it in front of me. "Sign this," she said coldly. "Voluntary relinquishment of inheritance rights to the family mansion. It's for the good of the family. Our business is in trouble, and we need the capital that the mansion can provide." I looked at the paper, my hands shaking. I thought about how this was all a setup. They had invited all these relatives to pressure me into giving up what was rightfully mine. But then I noticed a woman in the far corner. She had gray, streaked hair and was wearing a simple black dress. She was looking at me with an expression that seemed to say, "Stay strong." I remembered the events that led me to this moment. 4 weeks ago, I was in my art studio, surrounded by the smell of paint and canvas. My phone buzzed, and I saw my mother's name on the screen. She never called. She usually sent short, curt texts. "Pauline," her voice was unusually sweet. "Your father and I have been thinking. It's time the family came together for your birthday. We're having dinner at the Grand Royale on Saturday at 7 o'clock. The Grand Royale was the most expensive restaurant in town, the place where they had celebrated my brother's business school acceptance and all their other achievements. I was shocked. In all my years, my mother had never once made a big deal out of my birthday. 2 days later, my brother, Ethan, showed up at my studio. He was dressed in a sharp business suit, looking out of place in my creative space. "Nice place," he said, but it didn't sound like a compliment. "I've been thinking about the family mansion," he said. "It's just sitting there, while our business is struggling. Grandma left it to you, but it should be used for the family's benefit." I was angry. That mansion is where Grandma taught me to paint. "It's not just a piece of property to me," I said. Ethan rolled his eyes. "You're so sentimental. This is exactly why Mom and Dad." "Well, never mind. You should come to dinner on Saturday. Mom has plans." The word plans hung in the air, and I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. 3 days before the dinner, I started getting subtle pressure. A text from my cousin, Ava, said, "Heard you might be selling the mansion." "That's so generous of you." I knew someone had been talking. Then my father called. His voice was cold. "Your mother is very upset, Pauline. The family needs that mansion. We've supported your art, even though it's been an embarrassment to us. Now it's time for you to do your part." I argued. "Grandma left it to me in her will. That was her choice." My father's voice dropped. "Wills can be contested. Loyalty to the family shouldn't have to be." The night before the dinner, I pulled out the red silk dress that Grandma had given me for my 25th birthday. She had said, "For when you need to feel like a warrior." I laid it on my bed and stared at it, trying to convince myself that everything would be okay. My phone buzzed with an unknown number. The message said, "Don't go tomorrow. It's not what you think." I tried to call back, but the number was already disconnected. As I sat on the edge of my bed, My eyes fell on the small wooden box that Grandma had left me. I slowly opened it. Inside was a handwritten letter and an old photograph of two young women. One was clearly my mother, and the other I didn't recognize. I couldn't bring myself to read the letter that night. I needed to hold on to the hope that my parents might actually care about me. I tucked the letter into my purse and tried to sleep. Back in the restaurant, as my mother pushed a pen towards me, I thought about Grandma's words. I thought about the woman in the corner. I looked up at the room full of people who were waiting for me to break. Actually, I said, my voice stronger than I expected, I do have something to say. Give me the microphone. My mother laughed dismissively. The microphone? This isn't a performance. I gestured to the stand by my father's seat. You planned every detail of this, the seating, the witnesses, the lawyer. You wanted an audience, so let me speak. My mother reluctantly agreed, but she started to list all my so-called failures. She refused to join the family business. Her art exhibitions have been a flop. She's a liability to the family. But I wasn't going to let her break me. I reached into my purse and pulled out Grandma's letter. 6 months ago, my grandmother, Amelia, passed away. She was the only one in this family who ever made me feel loved. She left me the mansion because she knew what would happen once she was gone. I began to read the letter. My dearest Pauline, if you're reading this at a family gathering, things have gone exactly as I feared. Your mother has always seen people as tools. She tried to take this mansion from me 15 years ago, but I refused. I knew she would try again with you. Look for your Aunt Grace, the one your mother erased from the family 20 years ago. She is proof of everything your mother has done. The room erupted in whispers. Aunt Grace? I had never heard of her. Then, the woman in the corner stood up. Hello, Victoria, she said, her voice carrying across the room. It's been 20 years. Did you miss me? My mother's face went pale. You have no right to be here. You were cut off. Aunt Grace walked towards the table. I was cut off because I found out what you were doing with Grandma's accounts. You were siphoning money, forging her signature, and isolating her from anyone who might notice. She pulled out her phone and played a recording. It was my mother and father's voices, planning the whole birthday dinner as a way to pressure me into signing away the mansion. The room fell silent. Uncle Henry spoke up. Victoria, what have you done? My mother had no answer. I stood up and faced my parents. You wanted to disown me? Consider it done. But on my terms. I will not sign that paper. The mansion is rightfully mine, and Grandma's will has a clause that any document signed under duress is void. I looked at the lawyer, Mr. Thompson, who was holding the notary's stamp. His face went pale as he realized his plan had failed. People started to leave the room, shaking their heads. My mother was in a rage. This is ridiculous. Grace has always been a liar. But no one was listening to her. My younger cousins, Ava, Liam, and Mia, came up to me. Can we come with you? Ava asked. We don't want to be part of this. I smiled. Of course. Let's go. There's a diner 2 blocks from here. We walked out of the restaurant, leaving my parents behind. That night I went home alone, but I felt a new sense of freedom. I knew I had made the right choice. In the following weeks, the fallout was swift. Ava called to tell me that Uncle Henry and Aunt Carol had pulled their investment from the family business. They said they couldn't trust the family's judgment after what they saw, she reported. 3 of my mother's friends from the country club stopped talking to her. The birthday intervention had become a scandal in our social circle. My father dropped out of his business club, saying he needed time to reflect. Ethan called me, angry and broken. You've ruined everything. The business might have to close. I told him it was never my burden to carry. You and Mom and Dad tried to use me for your own gain. Aunt Grace and I met for coffee one day. She told me the whole story. 20 years ago, I found the evidence of your mother's financial fraud. When I confronted her, she turned everyone against me. But your grandma knew the truth. She planned for this moment so that when your mother made her move on you, I'd be there. I realized that my mother didn't hate me. She feared me because I was the one thing she couldn't control. 1 month later, I stood on the balcony of the family mansion, watching the sunset. I had started teaching art classes on the weekends, and Ava, Liam, and Mia often came to help. Aunt Grace visited every Sunday for dinner. We were building a new family, one based on love and respect. One Thursday morning, my phone rang. It was my mother. "Your father is reconsidering his will. If you apologize publicly and sign over the mansion, we might reconsider your place in the family." I looked out at the ocean and said, "Mom, I don't need your will. I have everything I need. I've learned to live without your approval. If you ever want a real relationship based on honesty, my door is open. But those are my terms." She hung up, and I knew she would never call again. But I kept my door open, not because I expected her to walk through it, but because I refused to become like her. I had learned that I could choose my own family and live a life on my own terms.